You do have to, when it comes to having a discourse, you have to determine between what do I want to engage in and what are the boundaries that I need to create. Like any relationship, I'm not going to accept someone who's going to demean me, my experiences, who isn't willing to learn and grow from this. I'm not having that conversation.
I hope that they're having these conversations when we are not in the room. I think that that's really, really key. It's enough to like, for my white friends to give me a phone call and be like, I thought the video was awful.
Y'all want to be invited to the cookout? This is the cookout. This is education. This is activation. We need you here in order to invite you there. And trust me, we want to. We just got to make sure your intentions are matching your impact. So, come on, get your plate. This is That Talk. Welcome back to another episode of That Talk. I'm Javi. Make sure you're registered to vote. Vote for Joe Biden. Now, this week we're talking about allies and how we can turn allies into accomplices and really create the change and make sure our intentions match our impact. So, given all the recent unrest and protests and things, have people outside of your race reach out to you to check in with you? And how did those conversations go? How did you feel about it?
The first thing I always tell them is, I'm not going to do your homework for you. These are 5 books you should read. You read these 5 books, and then you can come back to me and have a conversation. But what's interesting is, I've found that, with one person in particular, one of the books she read was on redlining. People that have been interested and willing to learn more outside of our conversations. And the things they learn have shocked them.
The fact that some of them could not see that in this moment, it was more, it wasn't like, how do I find my registration deadline or who should I vote for in this election? It was about something that felt very personal. And some of the people who were like, I wouldn't even say it was checking in, they were trying to figure out what they could do and completely ignoring the fact that I might be personally feeling something around this.
I've had a lot of conversations with some, white folks, Black people, brown people, red people. And it's been very fruitful, but definitely when they start bringing the conversation up, it does get a little tense for them at first, at least.
I'm not doubting that, thank you. But I want to make sure that it's not just that these conversations are happening with us, but they're having like the frank and difficult discussions with their grandparents, with their parents, with every single member of their household who is of voting age, to make sure these systems don't get perpetuated. So
welcome having that talk. That's part of the conversations that we need to have. And I've seen all sides of it. We've all seen it all over the last few weeks where some of our Black fans are saying, hey, I appreciate my white friends reaching out and wanting to learn, but that's on you guys to figure out. And I don't take that position. Part of it is because, and I don't take it for a couple reasons. One, I don't trust a bunch of white people in the room without me there. That's already happening. So why would we allow them to have the narrative on what the solution should be without us in the room?
Like Pierce said, if you don't talk it out, you're going to act it out. So I think these conversations are necessary because we need you versed in our pain if you're going to help us alleviate it.
But also be very stern about telling people that this actually isn't the moment for you to come in like a white savior. This is your moment to try to understand what your own privileges and biases are and how you are doing that daily to people, how you are constantly inflicting trauma, how you are constantly inflicting pain on people who work alongside you, and how sometimes your microaggressions can come out in different ways and actually add to what can become a very toxic work culture.
That's part of our beef is we need leadership positions. We need a seat at the table. So I'm going to keep that mindset and say for these conversations, for all of my white friends that have reached out, I say I thank you so much for wanting to be educated, for asking me about my experience, for admitting that maybe you didn't experience the same thing I did and you're willing to learn about it. I'm always willing to have that discussion.
We're talking about these issues regardless of whether or not they're in the news. So our conversations didn't change, but I also knew that I could be really honest with them.
I think we have an opportunity to show grace to each other. And also, I think we have to, for those of us who have the ability to do so, we need to think about showing grace to others and then utilize this moment to educate them on how they can be an ally. Now, what being an ally or being an accomplice looks like is different for different people. But I think that if people are genuine and consistent in terms of their eagerness to want to learn and help out, we can use that to our benefit and not use it in a derogatory sense, but use it to make our communities better.
They at the time though didn't realize the burden that they were placing on those of us who were Black, me in particular, and I don't want to call it a burden for myself. I actually accepted the responsibility because one, I felt honored to be the person that folks kind of sought out to ask those questions of, but at the same time I recognized what my responsibility in that moment was to not to water down what people were actually experiencing.
I'll admit I feel the same way, that sometimes, while we're feeling the burden and the trauma and we're carrying it and it's affecting us, because we can picture our cousins, our brothers, our sisters, we might know someone personally who has gone through this. It's hard to answer how we feel. It's hard to make you feel better while we're trying to heal ourselves.
You have to educate yourself first, and then you have an obligation to educate other white people. I have no problem with providing resources or, hey, go read this or check this out. But I do think that we as Black folk, we have an opportunity to be able to not only support and love each other.
It's really, really hard. And then by the time it got to George Floyd, I couldn't keep it together. And I was so happy that we were working from home because I spent most of the week just crying. And then I would dry my eyes enough to get on, any work Zoom calls that I had, but it was just really difficult. And if I didn't have those friends who didn't make me feel like I had to tell them how to fix things or, be okay and make them feel better by me being okay, by having those friends that I could be honest with, it did help get through that.
Like in the same month, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and then we found out about Elijah McClain, and then the 2 trans women that were killed in Florida. I mean, it never ended. We never got to grieve any of them individually. We never got the time. Imagine how their families and the rest of us feel.
I'm not willing to have the discussion with the people who predetermine what my life was already like, and they're just coming at me, not willing to learn, but to attack my experiences and make it seem like either I didn't experience what I was going through or I have it wrong or something like that. That's what I don't accept.
My one piece of advice is, if you're gonna ask and check in, well-meaning, well-intentioned, make sure you're not adding an additional burden to someone that's grieving.
How are you? And it's like, I'm not good, maybe, I don't know. I don't know what I wanted from them, but asking me how I am was not it.
You do have to, when it comes to having a discourse, you have to determine between what do I want to engage in and what are the boundaries that I need to create. Like any relationship, I'm not going to accept someone who's going to demean me, my experiences, who isn't willing to learn and grow from this. I'm not having that conversation.
In a position where people trusted me to be able to give them some of that unfiltered, unadulterated, but also very thoughtful and, mindful advice, I think to me was one of the greatest privileges I've had in the work that I've been able to do within the last 12 years of my career.
The thing is, we can't give you the solution, right? We wish we had the solution. We wish we had all the answers, but that accountability comes down to you. And if you're willing to engage and your intentions match the impact you're hoping to have, we're all ears. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I'm Javi, and as always, make sure your actions match your captions. I'll see you next week on That Talk.